your aquarium will never be the same. Because once you really understand what's going on in your tank, everything changes. In this video, I'm going to explain a few things that often confuse people in the planted aquarium hobby. And once you see how simple they actually are, it can completely transform the way you care for your aquariums. I'm going to talk about two lighting terms in this video, because when I first got into aquascaping, lighting was one of the most confusing parts for me. There were so many different terms. I won't go into all of them because I don't want this to be just a lighting video, but I definitely have to go over PART because it is one that is used a lot. It stands for photosynthetically active radiation, which is just the light that plants can actually use to grow. Not all light counts. The glow from a nightlight or a decorative bulb might look bright to you, but plants can't do much with it. They only use a certain range, mostly reds and blues, with a bit of green mixed in. That's why aquarium lights are built differently than regular bulbs. They are designed to give off the spectrum plants need for photosynthesis. PART is how we measure that. But here's the issue. Most manufacturers don't provide PART numbers. The only way to get an exact reading is with a PART meter, and those can be pricey. So instead, just use lumens, which is a measurement that almost every manufacturer will give you. Lumens and PART are not identical, but they measure very similar things. And if you're buying a light made for planted tanks, the spectrum is already right. Here's a simple guide. Low light is 5 to 15 lumens per liter, good for easy plants like anubias, mosses, or ferns. Medium light is 20 to 40 lumens per liter, which is enough for almost any plant. And high light is anything above 40 lumens per liter. That's what you need for the most demanding red plants. pH, GH, and KH are probably the three most confusing words you'll hear in the aquarium hobby. They sound complicated, but they are just different ways of describing what's in your water and how it behaves. pH is the easiest to get. It tells you if your water is acidic, neutral, or alkaline. Most planted tanks and community fish do great between 6.5 and 7.5, right in the middle. GH means general hardness. That's just the amount of minerals like calcium and magnesium in your water. They are important for plants, shrimp, and snails. A GH of 5 to 6 degrees works well for most tanks. KH is carbonate hardness. Think of it as your water's stability. Low KH can mean your pH swings around, which stresses fish and plants. A KH of 2 to 3 degrees is usually stable enough without making the water too hard. So here's the simple breakdown. pH is whether your water is acidic or alkaline. GH is the minerals in your water. KH is what keeps your pH from bouncing around, up and down. Once you understand those three, water chemistry doesn't feel so intimidating anymore. And the truth is, unless you are keeping really sensitive species, you don't need perfect numbers. You just need them to be stable. If you are finding the video valuable, remember to like and subscribe. It helps the channel grow, and it helps me to continue making videos like this for you guys. Color temperature is another lighting term that can be really confusing when you first get into planted aquariums. You'll see numbers like 3000K, 6500K, or even 10,000K on light boxes and wonder what they actually mean. The K stands for Kelvin, and it's just a way of describing how warm or cool the light looks to your eyes. A low number, like 3000K, looks warm and yellow, kind of like a cozy lamp in your house. A high number, like 10,000K, looks very cool and blue, more like daylight or a bright, clear morning. For planted aquariums, the sweet spot is usually around 6500K. That's close to natural daylight, and it gives plants exactly the kind of balanced light they need to photosynthesize. At this level, your plants grow well, and your aquascape looks natural to your eyes too. If you go lower than that, the tank can look really yellow, and while plants can still grow, it doesn't always look great. If you go much higher, it starts looking very blue, which is fine for certain setups, but not what most people want for a planted tank. So when you hear color temperature, don't overthink it. It's just describing whether your light looks yellow, neutral, or blue. Aim for around 6500 K if you want your plants to thrive and your aquarium to look its best. TDS is another one of those aquarium terms that sounds confusing, but it's actually really simple. It stands for Total Dissolved Solids, which is just a way of saying how much stuff is dissolved in your water. That stuff can be minerals, salts, or any nutrients your plants and fish are using. The higher the TDS, the more minerals are floating around in your tank water. The lower the TDS, the purer and softer the water is. A lot of people use TDS meters because they give you a quick number. You dip it in and it instantly tells you if your water is higher or lower than normal. You don't need to know exactly what every part of that number is. It's more about using it as a guide. For example, if your tank usually runs at 200 TDS and suddenly it jumps up to 350, you know something has changed. Maybe fertilizer buildup, maybe evaporation left minerals behind, or maybe something else is off. For planted aquariums, a TDS between 120 and 200 is usually a good range, depending on the plants and livestock you are keeping. Shrimp keepers, in particular, pay close attention to TDS because shrimp are sensitive to sudden swings. But for most planted tanks, it's just a simple way to check that your water is consistent. I know this one's probably the easiest to understand because it's not just related to aquariums, but it was a big deal to me when I first started. Before I built my first tank, I did a ton of research on canister filters and I thought I knew everything. But the very first time I heard the phrase priming the filter, I panicked. I thought it was some important step I forgot to do and that my filter wasn't going to work properly. Honestly, I didn't even want to look it up because I was afraid I found out I messed everything up and did all that work for nothing. Nothing bad happened, but it stayed in the back of my mind for a long time until eventually I found out what it really meant. And I want you guys to know, so you don't go through the same worry I did. Priming a filter is simply filling it with water before you turn it on. If the filter is empty and full of air, the motor can't pull water through it properly. By priming it, you're just giving the pump a little help to get started. Some filters do this automatically. Others have a button you press, and sometimes you just fill the canister manually with water before starting it up. And that's all it is. Nothing scary, nothing you can forget that would ruin your setup. Once it's primed the first time, your filter is good to go, and you won't have to think about it again unless you take it apart for cleaning. So when you hear priming the filter, just know it's a very simple step and it's not something that should stress you out. Those were some of the terms that gave me the most trouble when I was starting out, and I hope breaking them down this way makes things easier for you. Let me know in the comments which term used to confuse you the most, or if there's another one you'd like me to cover in a future video.